Boker Tov.
Good morning as we go to the Chitas of today. We're holding on the in Parshas Shlach, holding on chapter 13, verse number 21. They went up, these 12 guys, and they went up and they explored the land. They midbat Sin from the desert of Sin, ad Rechaves until Rechaves, love Hamas to come to Hamas. Rashi says they walked along the length of the and the width of the borders, so that their path looked like a Greek gamma, like a gimel. They walked along the side that was the southern border, from the eastern corner to the western corner, as Moshe Rabbeinu directed them. Go up to the way to the south by the way of the southern border until this the sea, and it's exactly what they did. And they for the sea was the western border. From there they turned and walked along the entire western border, which was the coast, until they reached Hamas, which was the north, which was which is in the Golden Heights, Mount Har, in the northern western corner, as described in the border of the land of the portion at the beginning of the words. These are the travelers. Negev, they went up the south. Chevron, they came to Chevron. And there was Achiman, Vesheshe, Vitalmai, Yelida Anak. These were descendants of giants. Chevron, Sheva Shon, and Nivnasa, and Chevron was built 7 years. Lefnei Tzoyin Mitzrayim, before Tzoyin of Egypt. The Rashi says, Vayavai at Chevron. It says Vayavai, he came to Chevron. So it doesn't say they came to Chevron. Kalev went there alone. Hence the singular, he came. And why did he come there for? He came there to be at the grave of the patriarchs, Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov. Why did he go to the grave of the patriarchs? To pray that he should be enticed by his colleagues to be part of their council. So he went to pray by the Kivrei Tzadikim. Shava Shanim Nivnasa. What does it mean? Is it possible that Chum built Chevron before Canaan, his youngest son, before he built Tzoyin from Mitzrayim, his eldest son? Rather, it was stocked with him everything good, 7 times more than Mitzrayim and Tzoyin. For the intention is to form us that the excellence of the land of Israel. For there is no place like the land of Israel for burial ground. Rockier, there's no place in the land of Israel rockier than Chevron, because it was designated for burial. And there's no country in the world excellent as Egypt at that time, at least. As it says, it was like the garden of the Lord, the land of Egypt. Tzoyin was the best part of Egypt, for the residence of kings was situated in Tzoyin. As it says, the princes of Tzoyin. Yet the Torah tells us that Chevron, which is the burial part in Israel, should be more precious to a person, to a Jew, surely, than the most beautiful part of the land of Egypt. And they came to the valley of Eshcol. And they took cut off a branch, and a cluster of grapes, one. And they carried it in a pole, and 2 people, and from the pomegranates, and from the figs. So now she says, the implication that it says they carried it in a plural on a pole. Do I not know they carried by 2? So what is the meaning to 2 to tell us? The answer is 2 poles. They didn't carry it on 2 people on one pole. There was 2 poles. How was it done? 8 of them took a cluster of grapes. 1 of them took a fig, and 1 took a pomegranate. Yeshua and Kalev did not take anything, for the intention of the other was to present a slanderous report, namely, just as the fruits are extraordinary, 8 of them needed to carry a cluster of grapes. So they go forth and learn for the stones that stand up in Gilgal. Each man carried on his shoulder one stone to set up in the Gilgal. The sages weighed them, that each stone weighed 40 sah. And it's a fact that the load of a person carrying a shoulder is 1/3 of the weight that they can carry with somebody else. And here it took him 2 poles, 8 people to carry this cluster of grapes. So it was meshuna, it was like an unbelievable kinds of fruit that Eretz Yisrael had. Verse 24, Lamakamahu Kara Nachal Eshkol, they called the place the Valley of Eshkol. Al Oidus Eshkol, because of the cluster of grapes. I said, Karshum Misham B'nai Yisrael, which the Jewish people cut off from there. Verse 25, Ayeshuv Metodaret Miketz Abayim, they came back, scouting the land after 40 days. Now she says, but doesn't the land measure 400 parsos by 400 parsos? A parsonage is equivalent to 3.5 miles in length. So if it's 400 parsonages to 3.5 miles, it's a very big country in walking, at least. And the average a person daily travels is 10 parsonages a day. So thus, it would take 40 days to walk from east to west. And they traveled its length and its breadth. How do they do it in 40 days walking? However, since it revealed before God, blessed He, that the sentence that would be a year per day, the Abishad knew that He's going to give them a year per day. He's going to, if they would do it in the normal way, it would have been double the time. It would have been 80 days, at least. So He made their travel quicker. That what should have taken them double to walk the country, it took him half the time. It should only be 40 days. It shouldn't be 80 years in the desert, only 40 years in the desert. Verse 26, Moshe came back to Moshe, and they said to him, El Midbar Paran, to the desert of Paran, Kadesha, which Yeshiva Isadava, they brought him back a word. It's called Aida. And to the entire congregation, they showed them the fruit of the land. Now she says, what means they went? They went and they came. It says already they returned. To compare their going to their coming. Just like the return was an evil, so too the departure had within it the concept of evil. They had already went out with the capability talking evil. They told him, and they said, we went to the land which you sent us. It's the right, it's a land of flowing of milk and honey. Look at its fruits. Now she says, any lie in which a little truth is not stated in the beginning cannot attain to the end. Therefore, they needed to say some truth. Efes ki azam. However, the people who inhabit the land are mighty. Hayeshabat v'arim b'tzuris gedolos, and the cities are extremely huge and fortified. V'gam yelidei hanakorin, we saw the offsprings of giants. Now she says, b'tzuris, fortified expression denoting strength. Amalek Yeshabat, it's a Negev. The Amalekites live in the south of the land. V'achiti v'avusi v'amoiri, while the Hittites and the Jebusites and the Amorites, Yeshabah, they dwell in the mountains. V'Kanani, and the Canaanites, Yeshav alayam, the Canaanites dwell on the coast. Al Yada Yarden, alongside of the Jordan. Now she says, Amalek, since they already been burnt by Amalek, right? When they went out of Israel, the Amalekites came out to fight with them. And the spies meant to them, the spies reminded them, remember Amalek, fierce. It's only miraculous that we won them. So Moshe Rabbeinu, Yada Yarden, Kemashmoy, they used it in a little sense next to the Jordan. So we're gonna come and fight the Canaanites. the Kanani, they're right across the Jordan, they're right across the river. Yes, Kalev, so Kalev silenced the people to hear about Moshe. Yemen, he said, Allah, Nala, we surely can go up. We can possess it. Kikol, Yachal, Nuchal, because we can overcome it. Vayas Kalev, he silenced them. How did he silence them? El Moshe, to hear what he would say about Moshe, he cried out, is this the only the thing that the son of Amram did? So everybody listening thought he might be intent to despise. Oh, wait a second. Kalev is going to tell us something more juicy. Since they were resentful in their hearts against Moshe because his spies report, they all became silent. Oh, let's hear what Kalev has to say. Kalev ben Yefuneh, he's the tribe of Yehuda. What does the head of this tribe have to say about Moshe Rabbeinu? Let's listen to his report. But he right away said, did he not split the sea for us? Bring down the mun for us? Cause the quails to fly down for us? Moshe, you're worried about Moshe Rabbeinu taking us into Eretz Yisrael. That's what you're worried about. Allah Nala, we can do it. If we have Moshe Rabbeinu, we can do it even to the heavens. If he tells us, make a ladder and go up there. If Moshe Rabbeinu told us right now to make a ladder and go up to heaven, we would do it because he can do it. Vayas lashon shtika, he silenced them. Vayas is the concept of being quiet. But verse 31, the people that went up with him said, they said it's impossible. To go up to these people, because it's stronger than we. But Rashi translated mimenu, from him. Kaviyachol, kape mailam. He said, no, this is even more powerful than God. They came out of the evil report, which they went to. They went to scout out it. They sold to the Jewish people, they said the land that we passed by, went through, Lazarus, to scout it. It's a land that eats up its inhabitants. And all the people we saw there, Anshe Midas, were men of stature. Now she says, wherever they went, they found them burying the dead. Whenever city they came in the land of Israel, they were busy with funerals. The Holy One, blessed be He, intended for the good. Right? When people say, what are 12 guys traveling through the country? Who are these 12 distinguished guys suddenly are in the city? The Eibishter God wanted to keep the people busy. So he made a funeral. Somebody died, or a couple of people died, big people. So now the whole city is busy with a funeral. So they had no time to think about these guys. So that's why they did the Eibishter Chash V'Latayv. God did something for their sake, and they turned it to the negative. Anshe Midas, big and tall. Those are the measurements of the attributes because of the unusual sides, such as Goliath. About them, he said his height is 6 cubits in span. Similar man of great stature. He said these guys are unusual. They are unusual in strength and height and everything. We're coming to a nation that has powerful people. Shamrinas feeling we saw the giants. Bnei Anak, the sons of Anak. Menanaphilim, they were the descendants of the giants. In our eyes, we seem like grasshoppers. And so too we were in their eyes as grasshoppers. Now she says, Anakim, giants, descendants of Shamzi and Azael, who fell from heaven, the generation of Enosh. We heard them telling each other there are ants in the vineyard who look like people. Anak shemanikim chama bekema, because the sun was draped around their neck. They were so tall, they blocked out the sun. Chapter 14, verse number 1. Vatisa Kaleida, so the entire community raised their voices. They started shouting, and the Jewish people cried, Balaylahu, in that night. Not just Kaleida, even the members of the Sanhedrin. They tried to complain to Moshe and Aaron, Kobane Israel. And the community said to them, Lu masnu beretz Mitzrayim. If only would have died in the land of Egypt, or only if he would have died in this desert. So they said, Alavai, that we should die right over here. Why would God bring us to a land, limpa b'cherev, to fall at the sword? And all our children and our women will be to spoils to the nation that will kill us out. It's really better for us to go back to Egypt. Each person said to his brother, Nitna, let us appoint a leader. Let's go back to Egypt. Nash says, let's put a king. Our sage, however, explained the term of idolatry. Moshe and fell on their faces of Fnei Kol Eidah in front of the entire congregation. Fnei Kol Kalas and he saw in front of the entire congregation of the Jewish people. Yeshua ben Nun, and Yeshua ben Nun. When I told them, they also were the ones who went to scout the land. Carter was begedim that tore they rendered their garments. By Yemiruel called Das, but they saw Laman. And they said to the entire Jewish people, the land that we have come through, to scout it, this land of Israel is beautiful, exceedingly, exceedingly a beautiful land. And that completes the Chumash for today. We now go to the Tanya of the day. And we're in the middle of chapter 7. In the light of what was said above, God's knowledge is only one with him. For otherwise it would imply multiplicity in one whose perfect unity. We can understand the error of certain scholars in their eyes. May God forgive them, even those who erred unwillingly and are in need of atonement. They erred and they misinterpreted in their study the writings of the Arizal, a blessed memory. And they understood the doctrine of what the Arizal brought out in Tzimtzum, Sham Kipshutai, that they translated Tzimtzum as a literal way that God forbid, separate himself from this world. That's how they learned it in the Arizal. The writings of Arizal states in the beginning, before creation, the infinite light of Ein Sof filled all spaces, and there was no room for the creation of an infinite world. And so much of the worlds are by definitions finite, where divine light is infinite, there's no room within the infinite for finitude. How then the finitude will come into being? Arizal explains the concept of Tzimtzum, which we have been explaining all these days. That the Ein Sof departed, meaning he ceased to be revealed, so that the infinities had no longer in a state of revelation. And all that remained revealed was the power of finitude. This power does allow for creation of a finitude world. The scholars in their own eyes misunderstood the mere concealment to mean a literal departure. And these were great scholars of that time, of the time of the Alter Rebbe. They said that the Eibishter, so to say, removed himself, God forbid. That the Eibishter, that Arizal meant that he removed himself and his essence, God forbid, from this world. Meaning that he literally removed his presence rather than merely concealed it. They said. Eibishter looks, so to say, guides from above. Hashgacha pratis, I'll call you Tzurukulim, with individual providence, all created beings. Hashem Amal, which is the heavens above and the earth below. They thus envisioned God as a king who sits in his palace. Although his gaze extends beyond its confines, the king himself is not found there. He said, the Eibush looks, so yeah, God is above. And he has, Baruch Hashem, good eyesight. And he has the capability of seeing what's happening in this world. But not that he's here. God's gaze from above, all the created beings, they found the heavens for pen outside his palace. Now, part of the fact that altogether it's impossible. If you know what God is, then it's impossible to apply the doctrine of the Arizal literally. For that would be an instance of corporal, because that's the concept of the physicality. You cannot put physicality to God. So when you have a physical thing, you can say it's above. So that's why in the physical world, that we have time and space, we have things that are above and things that are below. Because that's the way in the physical world there is. There's concept of things that are above and things that are below. But you cannot bring a corporal, physical to the God, Chas v'shalom. God forbid. The Holy One, blessed be He. Hanivdo behem rivet abavos, which God is above any corporal concept. How can you, Chas v'shalom, God forbid, bring a corporal thing to God? If you bring corporality and physicality, time and space to God, you don't know what God is. And God's not infinite, Chas v'shalom. Who is set apart of the infinite myriads of separation. So one who's subject to the characteristics of physical body can be said to undergo actual tzimtzum and to depart. So a king, physical king, can be in his palace. He's far away from everything else that's happening in the country, and he looks for his palace. He finds out the news as he sits in his palace. That's a physical person, because a physical person, a king, can leave from place A and go to place B. So to the part previously was here, and now he's not. It goes without saying that this cannot be ascribed to God, who's infinitely removed from the phenomenon of corporality, apart, and therefore you cannot say to God, forget it. You cannot say in God that God is, you're excluding him. The second you say God is above, not below, then you have made a limitation to godliness. And you cannot do that to God. God is infinite. Apart from all above, so forget about it. How can you even think of such a thing? That God is not in this world. He gazes upon the world, but he's not here in this world. The Eibush is not here. The world has locked them out. But this thing itself, they also do not speak wisely. We're talking about great Jewish people. Alter Rebbe is talking about great sages, not talking about stam people. Because they themselves are believers, the sons of believers. So what they're saying is totally not speaking wisely, because they themselves are great scholars. They themselves know that even though they have great scholarly knowledge, they still have the concept of emunah. We're talking about great people that are believers, the sons of believers. And what is their emunah in? The Holy One, blessed be, knows all the created beings in this lower world and exercises providence over them. Thus, they themselves admit that God's knowledge and providence extends to this physical world. So they are maminim, they are believers. And they believe that the Eibishter knows exactly what they're doing right now. And knows what everybody's doing right now. Of course, we are manim and maminim. The Eibishter is all knowledgeable. We all have the same belief in Emunas Hashem. God is all powerful, all knowledgeable, and all benevolent. So to preface his knowledge of them does not add plurality and invitation to him, for he knows all by knowing himself. Where God's knowledge of created beings not come from knowing himself, then it would be correct to say that his knowledge adds plurality and in a votation to him. Previously, he did not know them, and now he does know them. So God had to, so to say, to come down. If we're going to believe in Tzimtzum Kipshutai, if we're going to believe that as a concept, that God, so he says, separate himself from the world, that means he has to come down to find out what's happening in the world. Because he doesn't know, he has to, because he's above, he's in his palace, he's in heaven, and he has to Pasha come down and figure it out. If they don't believe that, nobody believes that. The Eibishter knows exactly what's happening after this moment. Why? Because he knows, because everything comes from himself. Everything is him, and everything comes from him. So by knowing himself, he knows everything. However, since they cannot apply to God, he must preface know them through his knowledge of himself. So what is their emunah? All their learning and all the philosophy, ultimately they all have faith that the Eibishter knows exactly what's happening right now. How does he know exactly what's happening right now? According to, if they believe that the Eibishter is above and he pushed it out, how does he know what's happening? Maybe they're not interested right now. Maybe God's not interested. So maybe when you dive into God, maybe God's not interested. He's busy. He's in the heaven. And he's not interested in what's going on in the world right now because he contracted himself. He said, I'll see you later. But they don't believe that either. Even these great people who say that say such a philosophy, that they feel that Rizal said that, Chas v'shalom, don't believe that. We all believe that the Eibishter is right here. Why is the Eibishter right here? If they believe in Tzimtzum Kipshutai, if they say that there was a contraction and a separation of God from the world, so maybe it's not that way. You can daven, and God's not listening. Why? Because he's in heaven. He's busy. You're not loud enough. You're not important enough that God should listen to you. Who are you that God should listen to? He's in heaven. He's in a palace, and he's busy in heaven, and he separated himself from the world, God forbid. But they don't believe that. They yidden. They daven. They know that when they daven, the Eibishter hears. Why? Because we don't believe in Tzimtzum Kipshutai. Not Tzimtzum Kipshutai. The Eibishter is right here. Because God knows everything from himself, because we come from him. Everything comes from him. So by his knowledge of this world is the reason that there is a world. So therefore, God doesn't have to, so to say, hear what's happening. Everything, every thought, and every speech all comes from his existence. I can speak because God gave me the capability of speech. So God knows me from himself. He doesn't have to come down and find out what's happening to Zalman Bucket. He knows exactly, because everything that happens to me is through him. It's because of his existence. And his existence is my existence, and my thought and my speech and everything that I do. So they themselves have this emunah. They don't think that the Eibush is not listening to us, or God is separate from us. No, they also believe that. So then, if they believe that, so how can they say that the Eibush to separate himself from the world? Doesn't make any sense. Then their emunah, why would they have such a emunah if they feel that, God forbid, that the Arizal meant he's cut off from the world? Thus, in essence, the essence of being and his knowledge of all created things are one. So since God's knowledge and providence extends to this world, and since his knowledge is one with him, it follows that God himself is found within this physical world. Unlike a king who sits in his palace and gazes beyond its walls, the king himself is to be found wherever his providence and knowledge are found. True enough, it's only through divine service that the world may be transformed into a place with God's revealed. Nevertheless, God is present, even though revelation to reveal God is up to me. It's up to my service to reveal God. But nevertheless, God's presence, whether he's revealed or not revealed, the presence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is present right now in this world, which feels itself as existent independence. Don't look at that the world feels that independency. That proves that God is, so to say, not at present in this world. Chas v'shalom. The Eibush is as a present in this world as he's present in the most spiritual worlds. And there's no tzimtzum, there's no contraction to God. The contraction is to us. The Eibush feels itself exists independent to him in the same degree as it's present within the higher spiritual world. And this is what written in Zohar, the last asar ponu minei. There is no place devoid of him. God fills the world. Nothing is hidden from him. Neither the upper loibe elon, neither in the upper worlds, the loibe tachton, and neither in the lower worlds. Thus, we find explicitly stated in the Zohar that God himself, less asar panamine, God himself is found within the lower worlds, and the lowest of which is this physical world. And also it's brought down the portion of Zohar and Raya Mehemna and the portion of Pinchas. Iu toughest bikule. He grasps all, the less man the toughest bay, and none can grasp him. Iu Sefer Kalam, he encompasses all the worlds. The less man did nothing, and no one goes out of his domain. Iu Mamalik Kalamim, he fills and permeates all worlds. V'iyu mikasher zina lezina ilav etata, and he binds and unites a kind to a kind, upper with lower. V'les kurva b'dalid yisoidis, and there's no closeness in the four elements in which this corporal world is comprised of. Ella b'kutsha b'richu, it's all except through the Holy One, blessed be He. Kad iyu benayu, when He's within them. It's only through his power that these four inherently contradictory elements are bounded together. Ad kalashene, these are the words that are brought in Raya Mehemna in the Zohar. After that, it says, the Zohar wants to tell us, less man the toughest bay, no one can grasp him. Means there's no one even amongst the supernal intelligence, even the world of Atzilus, meaning incorporeal creatures of high spiritual worlds who apprehend the divinity, who apprehend of divinity is superhuman, above humanity, who can grasp by means of his intellect the essence being of the Holy One, blessed be. It's impossible. It's impossible for even the upper spiritual worlds and the most godly entities of the spiritual worlds to be able to grasp infinity because they're still finite. Everything is finite to God. As brought down to Kudim, Stimo de Kol Stimin, that God is hidden from all spiritual worlds, which are themselves hidden from all physical worlds. The less machshava tfisrei klal, no thought can grasp men at all. The point being made here is that God cannot be grasped even by the heavenly thoughts possessed by the hidden worlds. There is, however, yet another constant hand to grasp, tfisa, the ability to adhere and thereby to effect a change. Thus, the fact that one cannot grasp God also means that nothing can affect a change in him. Not only can we not understand God, can't take a hold of godliness. When a person makes something, he will inadvertently be grasped by the object of his creation. He will undergo changes in accordance with the particular demands of the object, which he's producing. In the case of God, however, his creation, all existence being caused no change in him whatsoever. They do not hold him, so to speak, or grasp him. From this point of view, the creation of the lower worlds is even more telling, for the creation required a great degree of tzimtzum and enclosement. Nevertheless, even though this creation, the creation of especially the physical world, which is so far away from even the creation of the spiritual worlds, nevertheless, they cause absolutely no change in God. They do not grasp him, not this world, not the upper worlds, not the spiritual worlds. The spiritual worlds and the physical worlds, to God, are all the exact same thing. Even in the lower worlds, they all, not only did that there is none of them that grasp him. Afagav the Malakam, even though he permeates the world. The Eibishter is right here, standing right here, and he's in with me. He's in with me. He's in me. Because I wouldn't be here without him. Nevertheless, I don't grasp him. He's right here. He's within me, and I have no grasp upon him. It's impossible. Because the thing that is within me is infinite, and I am finite. And no finite entity can grasp an infinite entity. Impossible. Not only you can't comprehend it, you can't grasp it. Nevertheless, they cause absolutely no change. And animate them, the life force, he permeates the world and animates them with life force suited to each individual creature being in particular. Right? Because we're not even talking about the godly soul that's in with me. I'm living, my body is alive. My body is alive, not only for my godly soul, my body itself has a life. My physical body is alive. That life force is HaKadosh Baruch Hu that gives it a life force. The truth is, the Eibishter gives my godly soul a life force, and it gives me a life force. That's why we have to respect the body as we respect the soul. Both are creations of God. And to God, there's no difference between my body and my soul. Because God is infinite, and my body is finite, and my soul is finite. Even though it's a creation by God that the Eibishter made it infinite, but it's still finite to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So it's infinite to my body, but to the Eibishter it's still finite. Because the Eibishter created the soul. And if he wanted to bring an end to the soul, it would come an end to the soul. Don't make the mistake. That's like a soul of man enclosed in a body. To the extent that the soul is affected by the body and by the pains of the body. Makois from blows that the body receives, or kritus of the heat or the coldness of the body. So as the Frierdiker Rebbe would say, a small hole in the body is a big hole in the soul. Because ultimately my soul is affected by the body. It cannot accomplish its mission. Cannot do what it does. So it's sick. So the soul is sick. Even though the Eibishter is like it comes into the world, gives it its life. Not affected by any change of the world. The world can be mishuga. It can be a crazy world that doesn't change God that's in this world. From the winter to the summer to day and night. Which only doesn't mean over here per se winter and summer. It means that the coldness in the world or heat in the world or night in the world, good in the world or bad in the world. No darkness darkens God. No darkness darkens God. No negativity darkens HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He runs away. He's not there. As it says, the night is illuminated like the day by God. Everything is light. Because he's not grasped by the world. He fills the world. He is the world. But the world does not affect him. The world has no power over him, self-understood. The world has no power over him. That's why the expression the Gemara says, when it says that God gets angry or God gets happy, that's what he wants to be. Not that it is forced to be. You can take a body, a person can throw it into prison, and now he's affected spiritually, physically, and spiritually. Because that is what happens when the body affects the soul. Eibishter says, I'm not affected. I want to be affected. And therefore, when you do something good, I want to be happy. I want that concept of happiness. And when you do something bad, it makes me sad. Not that you're bad, you're evil has an effect on me at all. Neither, as it says, neither your good nor your evil can affect the Eibishter. It says, I want to be affected by it. That's my will. That's my will. And a human being, good and evil, affect a person, affect the world, because that's the way it is. If there's bad in the world feels it. If there's bad in my existence, my body feels it. Pas for shalom, to say that the Eibishter feels it. The Eibishter is above, not grasp, it doesn't affect it. Ani Hashem lo shanisi, I am God, it doesn't change. We say it every day and now. Adein Allah, Hashem Allah, B'Tanaka, Hu Yayav, Hu Yiveh, Hu Yeh B'Sifara. The Eibishter is not affected before the creation of the world, after the creation of the world, because the world is finite and God is infinite, and nothing can touch him and nothing can affect him. I forgot the mal. So as the Eibishter is in this world, selfless is above it. As the Eibishter is Mamalik Kalam, and he fills the world, because the world would not exist without him. And God, the creation of every entity, God is right there. The same moment, a Jew has a munah. The Eibishter is above it. Self-understood, he's the creator. And the Eibishter is infinite. And therefore, as he fills the world, he's Sefer Kalam, he's above and beyond it. And Sefer Kalam, like Chassidus says, he's hidden from it. And as we just said in the Zohar, Stima the Kol Stimayin, he's hidden from all the hiddenness. Because we all believe our neshama itself is hidden from us. Right? We have a neshama that's in our body, but it's hidden. So that's one hiddenness. And God's hidden of all hidden. Because to the body and the soul, both of them are all physical realities in comparison to what is truly hidden. And that is HaKadosh Baruch Hu, God, who is infinite, unlimited, above and beyond everything. This completes the Tanya of the day. Beautiful teaching of the Alter Rebbe, self-understood that this was the big struggle that you see in the Alter Rebbe's words himself that he had with the sages of his time in the teachings of the Arizal. And the important thing about the Alter Rebbe were about is that the teaching of the Baal Shem Tov, that the Eibush is right here. Hashgacha Pratis doesn't mean that God is watching from above, but God is right here because God, in essence, knows everything from himself, not from something else. It's to find out from someplace else, but actually knows everything from his own existence because his existence is our existence, and therefore everything is known from himself. That completes the Tanya of the day. Today is the 23rd day of the month. Today is a special day in the Hebrew calendar, 23rd day of Sivan. It's a day that in the story of Purim, it's a day that the Megillah says that Mordechai wrote to all the Jewish people around the world that they can ask for whatever they want. And the Rebbe brings out this statement of the Megillah that today is a day in history from the time of the story of Purim that every Jew can ask whatever he wants. Mordechai says on the 23rd day of Sivan, in the month of Sivan, on the 23rd day, that he wrote to the Jewish people that they can ask for whatever they want. And from the Melech, from the king, which in the Megillah we know that the king goes on God. So therefore, it's a very powerful day, the Rebbe says today, the very powerful day that when you pray to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you should ask him for whatever you want. And the Melech, the king, will acquiesce to your prayers, to your davening, and to your prayers, that he will fulfill whatever you want. So as you say Tillim today is the 23rd day, and the Tillim of the day is from chapter 108 to chapter 112. When you say Tillim today, have in mind forever you want. That God should give you only long life and lots of beautiful family and health and wealth, and ultimately the ultimate blessing that the Mashiach should come and take us out of this gullus, and there should be a revelation of God in the world. But it's a very special day. Don't lose the day, and don't be afraid to ask what you need, because today is a very special day. So when you say the Tillim, please have in mind, if you know somebody that's not well, you know somebody needs happiness, know somebody needs children, know somebody needs parnasa, whatever it be, pray for others and pray for yourself that you should have today, that God should fulfill your desires and your needs, to have whatever you want. And as we all believe, maminim b'nei maminim, that the Eibush is right here, and he's with you right over here. You don't have to scream that loud. So you can say very quietly or loud, any way you want to do it, and ask God that God should fulfill your desires, as Mordechai said that on this day God will fulfill all your desires. Have a wonderful and beautiful day.